Our generation, we hear this phrase all the time, emotional intelligence, or this term, I guess. But like if we look at it in a little bit more detail, right? Is it really your role to do that for others?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Noir Poise podcast, where wisdom is power is more than just a motto. Our generation, we hear this phrase all the time, emotional intelligence, or this term, I guess I could say. We hear it all the time, and it's something that I think like a lot of us are trying to develop, trying to learn, and trying to incorporate into our daily lives in whatever way that may look like. An interesting take of emotional intelligence that I think that we often don't talk about is not just having the emotional intelligence for yourself and being able to recognize like what triggers you, how to respond, so on and so forth, but having emotional intelligence for the person that you're with within a relationship. We recently got sent a video that had us thinking about it because oftentimes within relationships, we don't stop to realize how important it is to not just have the emotional intelligence to respond effectively, but also have the emotional intelligence to help regulate your significant other. And I think this is probably more relevant for men in relationships than it is for women, only because we need more regulation emotionally than you guys do because of hormones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it goes both ways, where you have to sometimes stop and think, well, how can I regulate this person to make sure that like they get to a space of I guess being able to like operate.
Yeah, be balanced.
Yeah, balance in a sense. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, that was the video was definitely interesting. I never thought about emotional intelligence as being something that you need to use to also help someone else. Like that's how you measure it. I thought about it simply as intelligence. Like, you know, one individual could be smart regardless
Intelligence
of what.
Emotions?
Yeah, literally. Like one individual could be smart when compared to everyone else, but that doesn't mean like they have to help someone else be smart as well. But I looked it up and I saw that the guy who originally identified emotional intelligence, or coined the term, I guess, said that there were 5 core components of strong emotional intelligence. The first one being self-awareness, which is recognizing your own emotions. Second is self-regulation, managing emotions and reactions. The third is motivation, inner drive, and resilience. The fourth is empathy, understanding others' emotions. And the last one is social skills, effective communication, and relationship building. And when you really think about these 5 core components, it sounds like 5 things that you definitely need to have a successful relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the part that hit me the most is being able to regulate another person. That was the most startling part, because usually I think most people would say if someone is, you know, not feeling good for whatever reason, you try to help them, but you don't think about it as I'm trying to regulate you. Or sometimes you just be like, all right, I'm gonna give you your space, you know, for you to bounce back, kind of thing.
Yeah. But I think it's different. It's different when it's like someone else versus like it's me and you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like we're in a relationship. I think it's always going to be a little bit different when it's your spouse versus like a friend or a family member.
Yeah.
In family and friend dynamics, I could understand the concept of I'm going to give you your space, or, you know, I'm going to try to cheer you up, but that's the most I could really do kind of thing. But like if we look at it in a little bit more detail, right? Is it really your role to do that for others?
Yeah.
You know what?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Like, I
wouldn't say it's your role unless you have that type of relationship.
Yeah, I feel like it only makes sense to do it within this type of relationship. Like, I don't think it should be part of your responsibility to do it for others. Like, you can if you choose to, you know what I mean? Like, you can, depending on the relationship or whatever the case is, but I wouldn't label it as a responsibility versus within a relationship. Believe it or not, I actually think it is a responsibility. Yeah. It's not necessarily it's a responsibility to make you feel good or make you happy all the time. But I think there is an importance in my role that has to do with regulating you mentally and emotionally and vice versa, because two become one.
Yeah.
We're one at this point, and I think it's important to step in where you lack and vice versa. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. But what do you think is the biggest barrier to that? Like, why do you think that's something that's not practiced as often?
I don't know if it's not. I think it's actually we just don't know the right language. Because as you were reading those, I'm like, yeah, I feel like we kind of do that. Maybe not as much as we should, or as much as it's required. But to some extent, I think it is done. We just don't use the term "I'm regulating you." I'm regulating you emotionally. It's more so like you need me right now.
Yeah.
You know, I need you right now.
Yeah.
And we use terms like that. So it's probably just like a lack of vocabulary. But in general, what barriers I think could be there, because I think for us, we could still work on, there's always ways to improve this. And I think there's ways that we can improve this. I think a lack of communication definitely is always a barrier. A lack of communication in a sense that's led there because of frustration or led there because of repetitiveness. Because I think sometimes when you're dealing with someone else, it can often get tiring having to repeat yourself.
Yeah.
So I can't speak for a man, but for a woman, I could see that being irritating and that leading to a lack of communication. And then that lack of communication is putting the man in a space of confusion of what's actually happening with the woman or what she's feeling, what she's dealing with.
Yeah.
And that prevents him from being able to be there in the best way possible for her. I also think it's knowing her and knowing him to the core.
Yeah.
Because what you're not saying with your mouth, I can then pick up. While that shouldn't be the case. We're adults. We should vocalize exactly what it is that we need, exactly what it is that we're feeling. But after being with someone for so long, you just hope, and I'm just being honest, but you hope that they just kind of like learn you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, why do I have to always say it?
Yeah.
It's probably not the best thing, because as adults, you should be vocal and just direct. But oftentimes we get into a space when we are dealing with emotional things where it's like, why do I have to always tell you the same thing? Like, by now, shouldn't you just get it? Shouldn't you know that like, this is what this means, and so on and so forth? I don't think that's fair to the other person sometimes, but it's a reality that happens within relationships when you're with someone for a long time. You don't want to keep repeating yourself. So I could see those being barriers where it's like it prevents the other person from being able to regulate your emotions. Yeah.
If I had to say that there was a barrier, I think it would be the person who should be doing the regulation starts taking things personally. Because I think it's easier to help regulate someone when you're not coming in with your own emotions. When you're not coming in with I'm tired too, or I'm angry too, or I had a bad day too. But if you know in your heart that whatever emotion this person experiencing or showing is not pertaining to me necessarily, but it's just something that they're experiencing, I should leave my emotions out of this, and then that's when I could be there for the person. I think that's the hardest or the biggest barrier there is, because a lot of times we come in with our own emotions and say, yeah, I know you're upset, but I'm upset too, or I'm tired too, I'm frustrated too. What about my point of view? And I think that's when both sides get unregulated. You know what I mean? So it takes a lot of humility, of course, but I think that I would say that's the biggest barrier, coming in with your own emotions.
To piggyback on that, as you were talking, I was like, you know what? I actually think it may be when the person who is expecting some form of emotional intelligence from the significant other isn't doing the self-regulation. Because I think that also can become a big issue. Like, you want to be doing the work too. Like, I should be doing the work myself, and you're also doing your part, and then it can work out. Versus if I'm someone that's not doing the self-regulation myself and you have to pick up the pieces, that's not fair to you. So sometimes in relationships that could happen where the person isn't self-regulating or doesn't have the emotional intelligence to do so. And that then becomes double the load on the other person, which isn't fair. But the reality is that can sometimes happen, especially if you're with someone who isn't really emotionally intelligent. Like, how do you deal with that? You know what I mean? Like, because it can be draining. Like, it can get draining and get to a point of like, yo, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I think after a while, the weight just gets too much.
Yeah,
especially in this
it should be two parts, basically, right?
Especially in this current times when I would say everything's emotions now. It seems like very little things are about logic and everything is more so about emotions. And I think that's because there's been so many years and decades of built up emotions that everyone's kind of like exploding right now.
Unlearning.
Yeah, unlearning to relearn. So it seems like most people are dealing with that. And I want to ask you, before I even ask you, let me tell you my answer. When I looked at these definitions, I don't think I'm an emotionally intelligent person. You was gonna say that too.
No, I wasn't gonna say that.
Oh, okay.
No,
Well,
I'm
what makes you
laughing at
laugh?
you saying that.
Oh, yeah. It's because when I go through all these definitions, I think I could do a good job by myself, like saying, okay, how do I feel?
Mm-hmm.
But as far as when it comes to other people, like the communication aspect, when I looked at these definitions, I was like, yeah, out of these 5, maybe I do 2 of them. Like I could
Let me
confidently
read them
say,
again.
sure.
You can keep talking, but I'll just read them.
Yeah, I'll say maybe 2 out of them, 2 out of 5 of them, I can confidently say, yeah, I know I do this. The reason why I would say that as well is it's something that you should be regularly practicing. It's something that should be innate to you. And because some of these things are not innate, like I can't just do it like a reflex. I don't want to put myself into that category.
Yeah.
And if most people weren't honest, I think most people would say that.
Yeah.
Because it sounds good to be like, I'm emotionally intelligent because I knew that I know that I'm angry. I know that blah 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 happened, you know, in my relationships or in my childhood, that's why I lash out. That's why I do this. I'm working on it. I'm going to therapy. That all that is good, but I think these definitions goes to show how broad that term is. Emotional intelligence is not just about acknowledging or recognizing what happened to you or why it happened to you or how you feel, but what is society getting from you as a result of that?
Ooh,
yeah,
that's good. I do think you are emotionally intelligent, but I think there are areas that can be worked on. Because to say like, I don't think I'm an emotionally intelligent, I'm very humble of you.
Yeah.
But I think it's dangerous to say that because there are people who really lack, not like they have nada. You know what I mean? Like they have nothing when it comes to this. But I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
I think most of us are, and we're probably saying it the way I'm about to say it right now. So I think I'm emotionally intelligent as far as like certain aspects of it, like recognizing it for others. But I think I lack it with myself as far as self-regulating myself. It eventually gets there, but it takes some time to get there. It's not, and what I envision as someone who's emotionally intelligent and really great at it is you're able to recognize it immediately and be able to operate and react appropriately. Whereas for me, it's like, no, I reacted. Now I think about the reaction. I'm like, oh, damn, I got to go back and fix that a little bit. So, yeah, I guess you are right. Most of us are not emotionally intelligent.
I heard this analogy before where the guy said, if you walk up to an orange tree, no matter how many times you squeeze the orange, apple juice won't come out. And he went on to tie it into how sometimes people say, I burst out of anger because that person made me burst out. It's like, no, that anger was inside of you. Like no matter, and I think that's where I would love to get to, or that's where I plan to get to as far as emotional intelligence is being able to, like you just said, regulate so often or so on point that I could recognize the first step. If I have 10 steps to losing my temper, I should be able to recognize step 1. So that's not that I'm human and I can never get angry, but I'm just better at acknowledging what are my triggers kind of thing.
I think accountability is really important because as you were saying that, it reminded me of something I read a while back that was paraphrasing, but that said something to the extent of like, we often look at situations and blame it on the opposite person or say like, this made me do it, or this made me react, or that person saying this did this. But ultimately, all of that is just a trigger of something that you haven't healed yet. So oftentimes like our reaction is mainly an area within us that was wounded. It hasn't been completely healed, and that comment or that statement or that action kind of like threw a jab at it a little bit. And so now you're bleeding out and you don't realize you're bleeding out because of that. You think you're bleeding out because of the comment, but you're actually bleeding out because you never did the work to heal it. And when you feel triggered or you feel like you have a certain emotion or reaction to something that's happening or something you're hearing, it's to let you know that like, this is an area that still needs work. It's not done yet. As much as like you may think it is, it's not, because if it was, you wouldn't be so bothered by it.
Right.
And I think that's very important with emotional intelligence, because having to do it for someone else, like a spouse, like you said, bringing in personal thoughts and perspectives, because we're all operating based on our experience and our triggers and our wounds. There's a child who was constantly like yelled at growing up. If that person is with a significant other who hardly ever yells, but they yell at some point and it scorns them so much. Although it's not right.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that the person yelled. It's what the yelling did to them. And so now that person can't step into the situation in the appropriate way because they're not operating from that hurt child versus operating in a way that can regulate that person that they're with. What you said earlier is actually probably very, very true.
One of the things that I actually believe that society, including myself, think that we understand, but we don't. One of these 5 core components is empathy. I think a lot of times we think we're empathetic because we can relate to it, but we don't actually show true empathy. Because I think once you show true empathy, it's no longer about you, but it's about the person. Empathy is kind of like, I feel what you feel, not necessarily I see what you feel and reminds me of why I feel the way I feel, kind of thing.
That's a good point.
So in your opinion, how could you practice empathy in relationships, especially with all these stereotypes about relationships in general, men versus women? I've consciously told myself, even when I'm doing research, to be careful what I'm letting into my conscious, because it's very easy to say men are right, women are wrong, or vice versa. And I had to keep telling myself, remember that there's no right or wrong. And that's why
there's just two perspectives.
Right. There's just two perspectives. So I think empathy is something that really lacks in relationships. And I'm wondering, in your opinion, how could a couple foster that?
Honestly, it goes back to being selfless. I really think relationships are a selfless thing. If we approach it in that way, it'll actually be very easy to do so. For me, I think understanding that I'm here to serve you. Like, so in moments like that, like I remind myself that. I'm sure I don't do it all the time. But I would say it's important to realize that you're there to serve the person in that moment. So despite what you're feeling, if you realize the person's having a really difficult time, like it's not really about you. It's not really about like how their situation makes you feel, but it's more so about focusing on them.
Yeah.
So it's selflessness, in my opinion. I really think it's just that. Like I don't have a full explanation. I just think it's getting in a space where you're like, this is not about me. And it's fully about this person. And I'm here to serve you. If you have the mentality that you're serving someone, you're not thinking about, my feelings, this, that, and the third. You're thinking like, this is going to make that person better.
Yeah.
I think of it kind of like in the Bible where like washing someone's feet and how humbling that is. That's what I go back to when I think of the concept of servicing within a relationship. Because we focus a lot on 50-50 while giving and taking is important, but it's never at the same exact time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like giving is important within a relationship and taking is important in a relationship, but you're not always going to be giving and taking simultaneously.
Yeah.
You have to be doing one or the other. So servicing you, I tell myself, this is the moment where I'm washing your feet. And there will be moments where you wash mine. But in this moment, I'm washing your feet and I should focus on just that.
Yeah.
So with that mentality, I think that'll help. But it takes time. Like that's something that I think as people, we're always going to be working on and trying to figure out, but it takes humility.
Yeah.
And humbling yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Because I think sometimes people try to do that, but they're in the back of their head, they're keeping score. And it just builds up. Like I seen this in a show before. This was in a comedy show.
I think that's a character thing though.
But really? You don't think people do that on just a natural basis? Because if you're...
I think there's probably a lot of people who do, but I do think there are really a lot of people who are selfless.
Yeah, I do think that is the case too, but those people tend to end up being abused. And I think eventually it comes out.
Yes, very true.
The point I wanted to make was there was a comedy show I'd seen before where a couple was arguing. And the woman goes, fine, whatever you want. Like always, whatever you want. And the guy goes, whatever I want. It's always whatever you want. So it's like clearly one side thinks they're always bending over for the other. And they're kind of becoming resentful.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because of that. And I think where empathy comes in with that is...
You're not doing that.
You're not doing that. Yeah, you're not doing that. You're literally saying, it's my pleasure. Because of different things I'm reading now, I'm learning how the brain works and how you could, I don't want to use the word trick, but you could train your brain to do things that you wouldn't want to do in the past because your brain works on a reward system. So if I'm dealing with you and I'm trying to teach myself to show you more empathy. Even if I feel like for whatever reason is an unfair situation, I could actually trick my brain to enjoy showing you empathy without having any kind of resentment with it. And the way you do that is you reward yourself, whether it's a compliment or, you feel good about it by showing the person empathy, and eventually it's going to be natural to you. But what I'm saying is,
But you don't think it's not going to be natural if you have to do all that?
no, because that's how the brain works. Your brain works on a reward system.
Does it?
It does. It's either, like they say, fight or flight kind of thing. It's either you're being rewarded or you feel like you're being punished. And the things that you do that are rewarding, you are more likely to do them again. So if, let's say you want to go visit family, whatever the case is, for one reason or another, you don't want to necessarily want to visit the family for whatever kind of reason. When you go there, if you have a good experience, your brain is going to tell you, I should do this again. But if you go there and you have a bad experience, your brain's going to tell you, don't do this again. Yeah.
I see.
So if you go there and you have a bad experience, but you find some kind of reward within it, like I was able to go there and, see a loved one that I haven't seen in a long time. Yes, it was kind of annoying, but that's what I'm focusing on. You're going to tell your brain, I want to do this
So
again.
when you were saying reward, like I was thinking of it differently. So I guess that's why I thought that. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because for me, I actually go back to, that example that I used to use with you all the time, like the concept of tithing in the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, where a lot of people tithe because they have the mentality that like, I'm giving this so I can get something back.
Yeah.
I'm giving this so I can get more. And since I was younger, I never agreed with that. I always thought it was weird. Personally, I still think it's weird. I don't understand the concept of doing it if you're doing it for that reason. Like you should be doing it because this is what you should be. This is what you should do, and this is what you want to do. So a lot of churches will do the whole envelope thing where like you write your name on it and then you give it so they know and calculate how much you're giving. And I'm like, is it really genuine if you're doing all that? I don't think it's genuine. I never followed that, but not saying that it's wrong. It's to each his own. But for me, I always looked at it sideways, and it's similar to this where like the concept of service. So if I'm doing something, like it shouldn't be on some, I'm doing it for a reward. I get the concept that you're trying to explain as far as like the brain, you got to trick it and stuff. And even if it's not a physical reward, but telling yourself that like, well, look at this. Like, look, you made that person happy. And it reminds me, I'm going to keep going in circles. Let me finish the story. So I don't think we should be doing things with the intention of getting something in return. I think it should be, you're doing this out of the goodness of your heart, and that's that, you're done. But I get what you're trying to say as far as humans, we tend to like, I got 1 point. You got 0. I got 2 points. You got, like I get that. And it reminds me of an episode I seen on Friends, I think, a while back, where they were like, we really never do good things.
There's no selfless.
There's no selfless, good deed or something like that. Like as humans, we never do anything good just to do something good. There's always some form of reward, whether it's internal or external. We get some form of pleasure. So we're actually doing it for ourselves and not for the other person. And I never forgot that because to some extent, it is. Because like even with the selfless acts, as I'm thinking of it now, like if I do something for someone and I know I'm not getting anything in return, and usually I don't want something in return, but it feels good inside because you're just like
get rid of guilt or something. Even in some cases, like
I thought you was talking about me. I was like, no, but it just feels good. You're just like, oh, I made that person happy. Or, oh, I helped that person. Oh, now they feel better. Like little things like that. It makes you feel good too. Like if you're someone who enjoys seeing that, it makes you feel good. So I guess what you're saying about the reward system is it's factual.
It's a dopamine hit. I think that's what they call it. So whatever you get a dopamine hit from, you're more likely to do it again. So if you notice, even with your triggers, if you have like a certain trigger where if I get annoyed, I have to have a drink or something like that. That's a dopamine hit. So after a while, your brain knows, you're annoyed, but go get your dopamine hit to feel better, kind of thing. That's crazy. And I think just to tie it all back, it goes into relationships where you don't have to keep points or think it's all about me. You can get a dopamine hit by being selfless, and eventually your brain is just going to know when you see your partner in need of regulation, this is your opportunity to not only help them, but get that dopamine hit as well.
But let's talk about, how do you regulate your partner?
We need a second memory card for that. No.
How would you say
I would say it goes down to just knowing your partner, like knowing what your partner needs. Like I know you enjoy conversations sometimes, or you enjoy, you enjoy cleanliness. Obviously, like things organized. So when I knew that you had a hard day at work, I would just go around the home and just make sure everything is on point. So at least when you get home, you wouldn't have another reason to be frustrated. Or I know you like crab legs, so I would try to
I'm
order
done.
crab
Yo.
legs
It always goes back to food for you, bro.
in advance. Like, but point is, like, you gotta know your partner, and sometimes you don't have to always try to get them back to the baseline, but you just give them a little boost. Because I don't think it's always our responsibility to get someone back into baseline, but sometimes you just need that jump start. Like if you have a bad day and I do something that you like, you may not smile immediately, but like, oh, it just erased everything that happened today. I can tell that I've helped some way. Like with self-regulating, I think the goal should be to be the type of person where your partner is not trying to avoid you. So you're not adding to the load, but even if you're just there, you're somehow supporting. Yeah.
I like that. So as you were talking, I actually thought of children, being around kids and having a child now. One of the techniques that I use, because children don't know how to self-regulate yet. So as the adult, you have to co-regulate with them and help them through it. What I've learned through tantrums, because if you have a toddler, you know.
Yeah.
If you know, you know. Physical touch helps. And I don't know if this is across the board, but from my experience, and not just with our daughter, but with other children that I've been around growing up, a hug helps. Something about, and I remember reading research about this a couple years ago, something about a calm heart holding one that's like in distress or whatever the case is, calms the one that's in distress. It's kind of like when a baby is crying, right? You pick them up and you hold them and immediately they stop. And it's so funny because even with our toddler, she'll be screaming and crying and going through whatever she's going through, and no talking, no whatever helps. But when I pick her up and I put her chest to chest with me, she immediately stops. Like literally, it's not more than 2 seconds. She will legit just stop crying. But I've learned that's because they don't know how to self-regulate at that age. And it's our job to actually regulate their emotions for them. So unfortunately, a lot of us did not experience it enough to get to a space to know how to self-regulate. And that is why we have a lot of adults, like I, that don't always know how to self-regulate, unfortunately. So now partners are having to deal with it, or children are having to deal with it, or parents, whatever the case is. But point is, we're adults now, and we still don't know how to self-regulate appropriately. So believe it or not, what I started thinking is the importance of maybe using the same techniques. Because I remember saying that to you, although I'm not a physical touch person, I was like, sometimes I'm like her and I just need a hug. Like hugging me for like a good 2-3 minutes can maybe like help. And it has sometimes. So I think that's good to know, because realistically, we're just adults that grew up in size, but sometimes we haven't grown emotionally, unfortunately. So considering that, I think is important. As you were talking, I was just like, oh, maybe it probably will help in relationships too. And that also reminds me of a video I saw a while back where a couple, they did this routine every day. It looks weird and it sounds weird, but listen.
I think I know where you're going with
Did
this.
I show you it? I probably showed you it, but let me say it. So they basically hug for like 10 minutes throughout the day, but they hug in different positions. And what it does is it creates some form of like stronger bond between them. They make sure they're breathing at the same time. So they're practicing. I know. Listen, I know.
Yeah,
Sounds weird.
It does sound weird.
It does sound weird, but these things be working. You know what I mean? Like, listen, I don't need to be all spiritual and stuff, but I'm saying, like, aren't we created by the breath of God? Like, you know what I mean? Like, isn't that how we came to life? So it shows that there's life in our breathing. So the same way that occurred when we were born, we can help others the same exact way. Is that how I started seeing it? Because when I saw the video, I'm not going to lie to you, I was like, what are they doing? I was like, I'm not doing that. Absolutely not. We are not sitting here doing that for 10 minutes. But now after this conversation, I low key want to try it and see if there's what if there's a difference? We don't know. You can't knock it till you try it.
True.
Point is, they did about 10 minutes of breathing exercises together, and they started off like simply, I think, like holding hands, then hugging in different positions. And it not just only created a stronger bond and helped with regulating them stress-wise, but it also increased intimacy for them too. Because intimacy is not what people always tell you, the physical. It's often the connection.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is. It doesn't always have to be physical or a deep-rooted conversation. It can sometimes just be like, we're engaging in this activity on a deep level, you know? So that can potentially help. Like I said, don't knock it till you try it. Maybe I'll link it down below and y'all can see the video. Off that, it does look weird at first, but hey, we'll let y'all know if it worked for us, because I'm actually going to think about trying it.
And I always say that if you want to get somewhere that you've never been, you probably have to
you gotta try. Yep, you got to try something you've never done.
Yeah.
But just so we don't get carried away, I actually looked up like what are some tips and tricks for people in relationships to co-regulate their partners when necessary. And these were the 9 things that popped up. 9 effective co-regulation techniques and strategies that can work in relationships and can help lead to deeper connections and improve emotional well-being. And I'll link the article down below so you guys can see it for yourselves, because there's a lot of other information, like doing it for children, doing it for friends and family members, and then doing it for significant others. Begin with empathy, which we actually talked about. Use active listening. Makes sense. Communication. Try shared breathing exercises. Okay. See, listen. Problem solve together. So I guess it's kind of like discussing the issue and not letting the person solve it on their own, but seeing how we can do this together. And I actually think I benefit from that. Like, I'm a type of person where it's just like, don't just leave me high and dry to figure it out on my own. Like, help me, bro. That's what we here for. We a team. Validate the emotions, which is important. So leaving your emotions out of it, like you said, I think that goes hand in hand, because then leaving your emotions allows you to validate the person's emotions, or be able to validate that person's emotions and not take it personal. Share positive experiences. Schedule regular check-ins, express appreciation, and add physical touch. So these are 9 tips. I'm sure there's more out there. I'll link it down below for you guys to see. But ultimately, I think it's just doing what works for your partner and having that conversation to know what worked for them. But unfortunately, sometimes we don't even know what works until we try it. So listen, try all of these. Okay? I'm finna try all the ones I didn't try already. Try all of them, because you don't know until you try it and you realize that, oh, this works for me. So
it's good to know.
And we're out. And we're out. Thank you for spending your time with us. We hope you gained some knowledge today that'll promote poise in your life. We have new episodes uploaded every Thursday right here, same place, same time. Until next time, you can follow us on Instagram at Noir Poise Podcast to stay connected. That's NOIRPOISED Podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback.
And remember, your wisdom is power.